and then somebody breaks, another one breaks, and away they go. It was freaking awesome.
I've heard 70% horse, 30% jockey. I've heard 80% horse, 20% jockey. What do you say?
I'd probably more 80-20.
Yeah, maybe higher? Higher than 80?
It depends. You know, good horses can get themselves out of trouble. Bad ones can't. Bad jockeys can get horses in trouble. Good jockeys keep them out of trouble.
As a owner, do you also place wagers on the
Sure.
side?
It's a sure way to go broke betting on your own horse. Trust me.
And the jockeys are allowed to also?
They are.
They are.
They do it kind of surreptitiously,
yeah.
Sure, they do it all the time. They do.
Do you want vanilla or chocolate?
Ooh, I'll take the chocolate.
Okay, good choice. Good choice.
I'll flip you for it if you want the chocolate one too.
No, I wanted the vanilla.
Oh, okay,
Worked
good.
out perfectly.
Yeah, it's this COVID thing has been awful for that. We'd have been traveling a bunch to see our stuff run, but
Where did you go in Ireland? Dublin and Killarney, or?
all over. Went to Dublin, went east and west. The whole family went, grandkids and all that. I went down to the Dingle Coast, went all over the place. I rode the train from Dublin across the country. Did that, and we rented a car for a while, and it's great because the roads are big. You drive on the right side of the road.
You're over, the steering wheel's over here and the car's over there.
No, they drive on the
Left side?
no, they drive on the left side, but the roads are way bigger.
Yeah.
Like England, God damn, terrifying place to drive.
Did you take the family to Argentina, or just you and Molly?
No, just me and my fishing buddies. There were like 4 or 6 of us.
Richard, do you have any questions for Bob? I might have asked. I asked his favorite play.
And which was that?
It's his favorite play, and I asked his favorite game, and
okay.
his catch.
I'll be suspenseful waiting to see
Okay, yeah.
that.
You'll be
I tried to get you a
disappointed.
Ralphie burger.
Say what?
I couldn't get you a Ralphie burger at dinner. So.
What about the pay for players?
Go ahead.
What do you think about the pay for players? Is that something you support, or is something you adamantly think is wrong?
I think there's and I'll sit on the fence here. I think there's a middle ground there. I think paying Johnny the quarterback 3 times what Johnny the right guard is making is inherently dangerous. I don't like that. I think they should be more well compensated, if you will. I'm old school enough to appreciate that there's value in their scholarship, and the Jimmy Rogers of the world would probably tell you that as well, that how that serves you later in life if you take advantage of that and what's offered to you afterward. I think there's some inherent value in that, but I think they should be. You shouldn't have to scrimp and go beg for money to take your girlfriend out for a movie. That kind of stuff is nonsense to me. But I mean, there's value in training tables. There's value in the tutoring you get. All of that. It's not like you're just Joe average student body, but certainly I think the NCAA profits perhaps more than it should at the expense of the players. But so just bigger stipends, those kinds of things, more allowances for travel and such. There should be more money available to them. But as far as a union type pay scale, I think that opens a massive can of worms, and I think could be probably disruptive within the team. The name, image, and likeness stuff. Your quarterback's going to get opportunities that the guys blocking for him don't get, and I think that could be, fracturing within the team. Well, maybe I'm not going to quite block so hard for you as I did the other day because you're getting all this and I'm getting squat, and you couldn't do what you're doing without me, and then, just those kinds of issues. But I think they should get a lot more money than they do.
Any thoughts regarding the portal? These kids are transferring.
It's open for coaches. Why wouldn't it be for players?
Agreed.
Just how it is. I think that again accentuates the athletic notion versus the academic notion, and I think that's a little unfortunate because I think when you choose a school, there really should be a lot of thought devoted to this really is where I want to get my education. So, this stuff, guys, senior grad transfers, I think that whole system has been just incredibly abused. I want to do some post-grad stuff, and they didn't offer it here. And this is for a guy that goes from Stanford to Mississippi State. I mean, really, we're all supposed to believe that. But I think it should be less restrictive than it is. Either that, or you make the game the same for the coaches. And if you're gonna take another job, you get to sit out a year. How far is that one gonna fly? But I think players should be afforded that same latitude.
And the salaries are just, I mean,
It's
Jamar
insane.
Jr. got $12 million to get fired.
Yeah.
The guy at Arizona.
Who's a friend of the family. My wife is from Indianapolis, and she grew up with Kevin Sumlin. Kevin's dad, Molly's father, Joe, played football at Notre Dame. Had a brother, his brother Mike, Molly's uncle Mike, played at Syracuse and blocked for Jimmy Brown. And then the other brother, Uncle Robert, played at Notre Dame, played for the Giants. They're all big as frickin' houses. You were asking about you started to ask about Notre Dame, and Molly's dad, who died a couple years ago, was just an unbelievable friend of mine and a great father figure and just a great guy. But we used to go back and forth. I can't stand Notre Dame and all the bullshit that is associated with Notre Dame, and I remember calling a game back there and say this is the most overrated stadium I've ever seen.
Touchdown, Jesus.
Yeah, whatever. That's great. It's a shiny obelisk over there. Who gives a shit? I don't care about any of this stuff. I always said we're walking outside the stadium, and I need to take a pee and go over to behind a tree and stand there, and there's a bronze plaque saying, Newt Rockne peed here in 1929 or whatever, that kind of bullshit.
That's great.
We had a lot of fun with it.
Well, do you disagree with them being in the Final Four?
Is
that too arbitrary?
I think it was probably foreordained.
I
Fits
agree.
Notre Dame to a T. They still have a huge cachet, don't they?
They sure do.
And they had a really good year, and they did beat Clemson, such as that was. But I don't think they're the caliber of some of the teams in front of them. But they probably have as much right to it as anybody. I didn't see Texas A&M play a whole lot this year, so I wouldn't. I wouldn't
Yeah, I didn't see him either.
presume to know that
I didn't see him either.
they
I just
belonged or
thought
not.
that their last outing was really poor. They got beat soundly, and I thought last game you're pretty much out.
Yeah.
And then I thought about the cachet, and I thought, I bet you they're going to.
Well, there's that. Should Ohio State be in there?
Yeah.
Didn't play very many games.
But back to the 19.5 points.
Yep.
I've never seen a spread like that on
I know.
a Final Four game.
I know.
That's something's
I
wrong.
might be tempted to
Yeah.
take that.
Take the 19.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty damn good.
Do you have any trips planned or post
Um,
vaccine?
We're supposed to go to Hawaii in a couple weeks here. My wife is just, I got to have a change of scenery. And I'm sitting there, well, I'm not sure I do, but we're probably going to do that. And then that Oaklawn race meet opens the 22nd, as I was telling you. And we might shoot down there to watch that. And then I've got a fishing trip to Cuba lined up
Oh, fantastic.
in April if it happens. Got another one to BC in the fall. I go up to Sitka every year to salmon fish, so there's some stuff.
Cuba sounds exciting.
Cuba's cool.
You've been?
Yeah, been once.
Okay. So that must have been in the last 2 years?
It was about, I want to say 4 years ago,
4
3
years ago. So Obama opened it up? Is that,
It was before that.
it was before that?
And, you have to do this ruse where we were a religious organization based in Vermont, and the outfitter provides you all this paperwork and stuff that if questioned, you can show them, we're with this whatever Jesus outreach deal, and we're going to go observe churches and that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, you're carrying like 27 fishing rods and you got all this shit. They know. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're glad to have you there.
Have you heard about a vaccine passport or?
I don't even know about any of that, Jimmy.
No.
That's all kind of TBA.
Mm-hmm.
One of the beauties about being 70 is like I get an early spot in line, so we'll have that taken care of.
So now that you're retired, Bob, are you in better shape than when you were working? I mean, you have
Mm-hmm.
more time, and no.
In some ways, yes, but I was telling you about the COVID-20. I weigh more than I've ever weighed, but.
What's an average day like for you pre-COVID, retired?
I try not to have average days.
Yeah.
I try to find stuff to do and be it around the house or family stuff or
Mm-hmm.
the horse stuff. Spent a fair amount of time out at the farm. We had horses out there, but chasing around after them. I got a box at Emerald Downs. We go out there, that kind of stuff.
And when you're doing the cardio, are you listening to music usually, or a podcast? Or?
Usually I'm watching TV, anything to
Watching
keep
TV.
my mind off what I'm doing. I've got that bike. Molly gave me that Norditrack bike that's got the interactive stuff. You can dial up programs
that.
and have these maniacs kick your ass, on a ride in the Andes or whatever. I try to stay away from those and just kind of do my own manual deal and do that. We just got I think the treadmill was in when you came. That was Molly's Christmas present to herself. She likes treadmills.
Okay.
So then I told you I've got a gal from the health club that I work out with a couple times a week. It's it's nothing all that serious, but it's good enough for 70.
So you've done quite a few sign-offs, whether it was for the internet or for the Huskies or for Como, and is there anything you'd like to say that you forgot to say, or is there anything you'd like to pass on to the next generation?
No, I thought a lot about that, getting ready for that last game, and that there would be some sort of expectation. What are you going to say to say goodbye? And again, I didn't want to be somebody else doing that. And in fact, I recall saying, if you're expecting something really profound here, I'll apologize in advance. But then just talked about my appreciation for the university and for the people in the program. A lot about that. It's been an awesome opportunity, and I had the time of my life doing it. But having said that, I was ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But just saying thank you. I think a final time. I thought that was sufficient.
Yeah, you don't seem to get too caught up in catchphrases or
No,
or
and
just-
I'll be honest with you. I was the timing of it was just right. I was ready to be done. And I always knew that I would know when that time came. If my enthusiasm for the prep work and all that needed to happen, I never lost my enthusiasm for game day, but the routine of it all, there was a little been there and done that, and with the way things have happened this season, I am so thankful. I can't imagine trying to do what Tony's had to do this year, or anybody that's involved. Just absolute insanity. Like I said before, your work starts Monday, so you put in hours and hours and hours, and you are ready to go by like Thursday, Friday. You're kind of putting the finishing touches on stuff, but by by Thursday you're pretty well set. Game plan's in, if you will, and then to have a phone call on Friday. Oh, by the way, we ain't playing. Kidding me?
That was tough.
Oh my God, it just brutal. And then always the busiest time of the year was when football crossed over the basketball. That got to be pretty crazy, and this year even more so. I mean, you just double down on the chance that, there may be a game, there may not be a game, and I wouldn't be excited about chasing after our basketball team right now either.
When you're watching a game, Bob, do you find yourself critiquing the sportscaster, or do you just watch the plays and critique the players, perhaps? Or?
Yeah, I probably am more into the game than the announcers. You're always tuned in to mistakes here and there. They're just saying dumb things, or why did you say that? I have certain expectations.
That'd be a nice catchphrase.
Yeah, really.
Why did you say that?
Say that. Damon Hewitt and I always fantasized about like maybe getting a satellite radio channel all to ourselves and being able to sit up in the stands and like with a beer and do the game as you might as a fan. What in the fuck was that? Those kind of things. Really, where there were no filters and no limits, and why in the hell did he do that? That is the dumbest play I have ever. Those kind of things.
I'd like to hear that.
It would have been.
Yeah.
Would have been fun.
Did you ever have an agent, or were your contracts pretty simple?
I had an agent for one contract at Como when I started doing television.
What?
Because there was some radio stuff involved, some TV stuff, and we negotiated a deal there. But all the rest of the time, I just did it myself.
And what was your last contract? Was it the final 4 years or 6 years or?
It was
8
kind
years?
of much like you got a football coach with a rolling 3 or 4 year and renew, and that's what we
Any
did.
incentives?
No, I never. I shouldn't say that. There was 1 year when Como got the Huskies back for the '89 season, and that's when I kind of needed to make a call on when I was going to do radio, do TV, whatever. There were some incentives built in. I take that back. I'm misspeaking. When I stopped doing television and started doing just radio, this was, I want to say, what would that have been? I think mid-'90s, when it just wasn't working out trying to serve both masters. We put a number on the contract for just doing the radio stuff, and there was a incentive in there based on advertising sales, and so that kicked in, and we had some pretty good years after that. That's all I'm going to say is
Okay.
those incentives paid off very nicely. But that's been the only time. And then when Como lost him, gave him up, wanted to chase the Mariners, and IMG came in and got the rights. I negotiated my own deal with them. Actually, there was an outfit called Action Sports Media that first had them. It was a offshoot of Paul Allen's deal in Portland, Rose Garden, and all of that. And they didn't do a great job. We're kind of ill prepared to handle it, but I negotiated my own deal with them. And then IMG came in, and I negotiated my own deal with them. And they, funny thing at the time, they sent one of their guys out from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where they're based, to do the deal with me. It took like 10 minutes, and we got done, and his name is Chris Ferris, great guy. And we got finished, and he said, well, congratulations, you're now the highest paid play-by-play guy, and they've got like 60 schools. And I think he expected me to go, whoa, what? And I just said, that's good, I'm worth it. and I'd like to think that was true. It was flippant a little bit, but, you get what you pay for.
Talk about being yourself as an announcer. What's your thoughts on Bill Walton and his announcing?
it becomes way too much of a caricature for me. I think is too often, and it's almost like he's been told, Bill, do your best, Bill Walton. Just go crazy. Say whatever you want to say. Be nuts. Just really be Bill.
So is he being himself?
Oh yeah, he's being himself, but at times I think he's being himself a little too much. He makes me a little nuts, to be honest with you.
Now, would you say that to him?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would stop being Bill so much. Stop trying so hard to be Bill.
What would he say back to Bob?
What was Rondeau thinking? You're crazy. I can only imagine.
Do you have any good Dave Niehaus stories?
Just that he was an unbelievable gentleman. He was one of the first people I met in Seattle. Because again, that was the Mariners' first year. And actually, when I started as sports director at Como, I was doing morning drive time sports and afternoon drive time sports, split shift type deal. And I would, I felt duty bound to go to the Mariners every night. That got to be pretty crazy, but I met Dave early on, and he was super welcoming and said, "Yeah, I've listened to you, you're doing a great job." And obviously, he was state of the art himself at that time. I always loved the dapper Dave type outfits he wore in that, and loved his voice. I mean, again, I grew up when radio guys were known for their character, and often that character was expressed in their voice. I think nowadays I couldn't tell you who's who. I mean, it's this whole ESPN sort of driven sound alike, talk alike, same sort of inflection and buzz terms and buzzwords. It makes me nuts. But back in the day, the Chris Schenkels of the world, unbelievably distinctive voice. Keith Jackson, unbelievably distinctive voice. Dave Niehaus, unbelievably distinctive voice. And the thing about Dave as a pro, I've always said, I think good, decent broadcasters will tell you what's happening. Okay, they can kind of let you know what's going on. Better broadcasters will appeal to your sense of vision. They can not just tell you what's happening, they can, through their words and your imagination, show you what's happening, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think the very best broadcasters can let you feel what's happening. And Niehaus was great at that. Let you feel not only their emotion, what they're feeling, but let you feel where they are, the time and place, and what they're seeing from a visceral type level. I've always talked about a example with Dave Niehaus. They were back east somewhere on just a sweltering summer's day. It was a day game, and he was just trying to convey how hot it was, and it was one of those July days, as he put it, where the thing you want most in the world is a watermelon in a tub of ice, and you go get a chunk of that watermelon and take a bite out of it, and it just cool you right off. And when I was a kid in Colorado, we on Sunday afternoons in the summer would go to a fruit and vegetable stand on Colorado Boulevard that had a huge tub of ice with watermelons floating in it, and we would go get those watermelons, and it was just the greatest thing ever. And that kind of thing, that kind of connection, that kind of click, I think separates the great ones from the field, if you will. I'll never forget that moment. It was awesome. Just said, I've been there. I know exactly how you feel. And if you can do that, man, you've done your job really well. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to think that, I was able to do that from time to time. Just, you get emotionally involved with what you're doing. I'm way more than a fan. I mean, I'm into that game as much as I can be without actually playing it. And I think your emotions and how you recount the game and how you tell that story should be reflective of that.
Would you put Harry Carey in that category?
You know, he was a little before my time.
Okay.
But, you know, everybody that listened to him, you know,
I sure enjoyed him.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and those great old broadcasters, and again, radio's heyday. I think just maybe the tail end of radio's day in the sun, if you will, and then it just became a television show. And I think the impact of the radio side, you know, went down accordingly, just by nature. I think the audience numbers would reflect that. But hell, when we started doing the games, we'd have, maybe one TV game a year? Maybe. The rest of the time, it was the only place to get it. And then nowadays, you know, when on an average Saturday, there's 40 games on television, including the Husky game that chances are is going to be at 7 o'clock at night. You know, there's not that many people listening.
I printed out the top 50 sports announcers of all time. And it seems like after the first 25 or so, it's a real drop-off. You go from
Shit, I forgot my
the
glasses.
Keith Jackson to Howard Cosell. Next thing you know, you're looking at Joe Buck's name.
Yeah.
Do you want to try mine, Buck?
I can read the Red Barber. And Mel Allen, you know, that'd be kind of my dad's era. But again, just really distinctive voice. Vin Scully, obviously.
I want to make sure you don't.
You know, Michael Jackson would be among
That's
those
That's
guys.
your parking meter.
That's your parking meter. That's why I said that.
Oh, that's all right.
Well, we don't want to get towed.
Kurt Gowdy, Howard Cosell, Bob Costas makes me nuts. I don't like him. Jim McKay was an awesome broadcaster. Al Michaels, an awesome broadcaster. Dick Enberg, really good.
What was the Jim McKay quote? Then there were none? Or there's nobody?
They're all gone.
They're all gone.
Unbelievable.
Watch that line.
And it, you know, same way with the old news guys. You know, the Chet Huntley and David Brinkleys of the world. Those guys, just fuck, different deal.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I think Dan Schulman. Listen, you know him,
Don't.
ESPN guy. He's the lead guy on a lot of their
Current
current
guy?
a lot of their college basketball. Did a ton of baseball. I think he's as good a guy as there is going right now. Really great voice, but beautifully prepared. Everything he does, and does everything well. I like those kind of guys.
I heard a great Mike Wood story. I don't know if you remember Howie Knopf was our catcher, Husky baseball catcher. And he had a big wad of chew, and he was right there at that pedestrian bridge that goes into the athletic department, crosses Montlake, and he was standing there chewing, and he spit. And he said this gray-haired guy came up to him. And it was Mike, obviously.
Clean it up.
He put his finger in his face, and he said, remember one thing, football pays for everything. And that was it. And I never got it until years later.
That's hilarious.
What his point was.
I tried to call Mike. Christmas Eve, I think. He didn't answer his phone. I left a message.
That's not like him. No, he told me you left a message, actually. I talked to him 2 days ago, and he told me about Starry.
Star Yellen?
Yeah.
He did Colorado football. He was fucking terrible. Even then,
We get the real.
he was really bad. There was a guy, my favorite guy growing up was a guy named Bob Martin who did the Broncos. He was the local sports guy on KOA TV, NBC affiliate in Denver. But he did the Broncos, and prior to that did University of Denver hockey, which was huge when I was growing up back in the day. They were really good. And I grew up in that area. University Hills was not far from DU, but Bob Martin was really good announcer. And you know, if I wouldn't say I patterned myself after anybody, which is true, but I tried to do it as well as Bob Martin did it.
Okay.
He was that good. Just local guy, but that good.
And you covered the Huskies at Colorado one year?
Yeah, 1990.
I think I went to that game.
Unbelievable football game.
Yeah.
It was,
Is Cunningham one of the guys on the Husky team?
yeah, it
Ed
was
Cunningham,
the year me and a lot of my high school buddies from that, we all turned 40. in 1990, and I actually had four of the guys that I went to college with. We all were turning 40. We had a reunion that weekend at Colorado, and you might remember that game was not on television.
I was there, so I don't remember.
There was no TV. That is one of the best football games I've ever seen. Two really, really good teams. It just
Was that
awesome
game? Was
game.
that game after they had cleaned our clock in Husky
Yes,
Stadium?
that was '89.
So a bit of
The
a
Sal
revenge.
Honesty game. Remember
Yeah.
all that stuff?
That was crazy.
Yeah, and then that was that '90 team. It's interesting. Did you ever meet Mike Pulaski? Remember him? Guy played quarterback for Cal. He quarterbacked that '90 Cal team or the '91 Cal team.
Okay.
Or Mike Pulaski, not Dad. Mike Pulaski. He was their quarterback, good player, and Cal was. You might remember that game in '91 was kind of for the marbles, as it turned out. They were really good. It was in Berkeley. It was packed. Came down to like a last type play deal and incompleted pass in the end zone. He told me he thought the '90 team was better than '91,
Interesting.
and he played against both of them. He thought the '90 team was better.
They lost one game that year.
Yeah.
The '90 team.
Yep.
Who did they lose to?
They lost to UCLA. Remember in the wind at Husky Stadium, Greg Lewis got hurt, and all that. Should have won the national championship that year. Should have won the show. All the dominoes fell for Washington to have a shot at the national championship had they not lost that game.
Interesting. I thought there was a big drop off after our year in terms of coaching, or actually it was our senior year because we lost Al Roberts, we lost Pease, which Jim Haycock was a heck of a coach, not to put him down. But suddenly Don lost these guys that were the real deal. And I felt like Don got a little over his skis, if I can say that now, whereas he thought he could coach anybody to be a great coach. And I think he found out he couldn't. And at that point, I felt like the program went a little bit south, and then he hired Keith Gilbertson. And I thought Keith was the major change in Husky football.
No question.
Yeah, because they brought out this offense that we'd never seen before.
Yep.
And you'd see a tight end that would go back to block, and then he'd go out and catch the pass for a screen, on the other side of the field. I saw plays I'd never seen before when Gilbertson came in. I thought that was the big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
And, and good on Don for seeing that. But you go back even farther than that, like that '86 team, Chandler and those guys that played Alabama, Sun Bowl, got their ass kicked. Bobby Humphrey and Cornelius Bennett and those guys. That led to a philosophical change too. Don just wanting to get a whole lot more athletic, especially with big guys. And that kind of presaged what was coming. 87, 88 were just okay, but that 89 team was good. And that's when Lambeau switched that bear defense, that 50 defense. After the ASU game here, remember, Kerry Conklin had like 5 million yards and we got beat, and they just said we got to do something different. And then they switched and started doing that attacking stuff, and the whole show changed there. But a lot of it, kind of had its genesis earlier on, I think.
Went through some cycles. Now, from your professional standpoint, you watched the Don James Gerberding play out, and the University of Washington is not your boss, right? Como.
Correct.
So you were able to stand back, but I imagine you were tight-lipped, or how do you just watch things unfold without?
Yeah, to a degree. I don't know that I was that involved in the politics of all that, and there were some politics in that whole thing between the president and the athletic department. I think it was a little bit of a power struggle. I think it was thought that Mike Lude might have had a little too much of that, and we're going to go the other way. That was a hard time. That was a really hard time.
But from your position, you just stay back.
You know-
and you have to be careful.
Yeah, you did have to be careful. That was one of those times when, being a reporter and working for a separate entity, really got to be a difficult place to be.
But at the same time, almost a better place to be than working for the University of Washington.
I think so.
Yeah.
But having said that, I was never one time censored, told what to say or what to do by the University of Washington. They were always just great to work for. Never told what to say or do by the coaches. Things that were said on the air weren't questioned. Whether they thought to question them or not, they didn't. And in that way, it was always good. But there were times, just from a journalistic perspective, that sometimes we were at cross purposes. I'll give you an example. When they were rebuilding the stadium, and the stadium crashed and all that. Remember all that. But when Mike was trying to round up money to add on to the stadium, he was working with some people in Japan. There was a guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but kind of a whale in Japan that was thinking about throwing some money at this and getting involved in building it. And I'm watching 2020 on ABC one night with a story about the Yakuza Japanese mafia. And this guy who Mike was talking with about building Husky Stadium was prominent in this story on the Japanese mafia, and not in a positive light, if you will. So I'm watching that on a Sunday night, or whatever night it was on, and the next day went into the station and started, at every level of management, what do we do with this? Because we're supposed to be reporters, and it was good enough for ABC to do a news story on this, and here's this same guy mentioned, and it went all the way to the top. The guy that was running Como then was a guy named John Banke, huge Husky fan. But I remember having a meeting in John's office. What do we do with this? Do we report this story? Do we follow up on this story? And end of the day, it was yeah. So first call was to Mike. And he goes, I know what you're trying to do here. I said, what am I trying to do? He said, you're trying to kill my stadium. And it was the closest that Mike Lute and I ever had to, headbutting. I said, I assure you I'm not trying to kill your stadium, but here's what we're looking at.
In fact,
and here's what everybody's looking at.
Right.
And what's your response to this? And it wound up, they secured funding elsewhere, obviously. But that was one of those times, and there weren't very many along the way, that the job seemed somewhat at cross purposes. When Don left, that was another, and it was interesting. Don granted 2 interviews when he retired. We, by the way, broke that story on Como TV, because I heard through my channels that Don might be leaving, and I heard he was resigning. I didn't hear the word retirement, but I went through a few sources and kind of confirmed that he's going away, and we broke that story on Como. It was on a Sunday on Como TV, and followed up and did a 30-minute special and everything that night. And I remember going over to the U and seeing Lambeau with the team, and we kind of made eye contact, and it was just one of those not now type. It's as stern, and goodness knows Jim could be stern, but that's as stern and kind of as sullen as I've ever seen him. But Don granted 2 interviews, and again, how much he valued loyalty. He granted an interview to me as the radio guy, and to Keith Shipman, who was at Channel 13, and they were doing Don's TV show. Those are the only 2 interviews he granted. You didn't talk to anybody in the print media. And I remember getting done with that interview, and I said, can we do this can we shoot this on TV? Because I was working for TV at the time as well. He said, nope, you did radio, I'll give you a radio interview.
Where did that take place?
At his house.
So you went out to his house?
Yep.
The same day?
It was that
the announcement?
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
You remember the day?
It was that Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was an amazing time. Carol was there. And Don actually was pretty calm. I think he was, in his mind, that was the only decision that could be made. I know he was vilified in some quarters for doing that, and jumping ship and deserting his team. He certainly didn't feel that way in his own mind.
What do you think?
I would tend more to side with Don. He just thought it was, and again, there were more politics going on than I think any of us knew at that time. But I think it was a decision he thought he needed to make, and I abided by that. I didn't see him deserting the school. I think, if anything, the school deserted the football program more than Don James did. I remember we did the town meeting show on Como, Ken Schramm, Sunday night. They did a show on this, and I was a guest on that. And I remember a closing line on that was, I hope the U was getting ready for a game, and I said, I hope they play better defense against Stanford than they did against the Pac-10 conference. And I still believe that. I think they rolled over and fell on a sword that didn't necessarily have to be fallen on. I think they were far too eager to admit guilt and all of that, and spank me.
Right.
I think they could have been
Interesting.
a lot more combative in the process.
So almost 4 decades. You're in a pretty good position because you don't have to get too involved in the politics. You're kind of in a sweet spot, really. But you're close. You're very close to the kids, the coaches, the teams, but then you work for Como.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, it amazes me that somebody can stay with the same company for 40 years.
Yeah, it amazed me too. Well, I was with Como for 25.
25.
And then 2000 was the last year with Como, and then the rights went elsewhere, and so did I. But by then I was pretty well just doing the games. I wasn't doing sports reporting on the radio, during the week. I wasn't doing any TV stuff, and that was the sweet spot. But sometimes when I was, beholden to the first master more than the second, that got to be
Any close
that got to
calls
be
you can
interesting.
speak of?
No, not close calls. I'll share a story with you when we lost the rights for 86, 7, and 8, and I was doing TV then, and had a feature called the Dipstick of the Week. I don't know if you ever remember that. It was a Friday, kind of a funny deal, Dipstick of the Week, with crazy stuff that happened in sports, and the ultimate winner would be the Dipstick of the Week. And I'd done it on the radio, and the TV guys thought that was fun, and so we adapted it for television. And the Huskies were, it was in October, and the Huskies were getting ready to go play USC. And you know as well as anybody that Don James' greatest rival was USC. It wasn't Wazoo, it wasn't Oregon, it was USC, because they were the state of the art at that time. And, to be the best in the league, you had to beat USC. So he always got a little more into it, if that was possible. But USC week was different, and I'm sure you saw that. Well, they're getting ready to play USC in this game that was pretty important, and this was the week that Kerry Conklin, who was playing quarterback for him, had hurt his thumb. Okay, and it was the week that Don closed practice to the media for the first time because somebody had reported that Kerry Conklin hurt his thumb. Don was furious about that. Just shut it down, you're all out of here. Well, we did and it was right around Halloween time, so we did a dipstick of the week story where I'm out in the stadium, an empty stadium, talking about what was going on and all of this and all that. I'm standing, you remember the moat that went around in front of the stadium and around the track? There was a moat. It was about, this deep. And I'm standing there doing a story, and you see these werewolf hands coming out of the moat. Inference that Don's in the moat with a werewolf. He's turned into the werewolf, and we had some visuals of the werewolf movies, the full moon and changing into the werewolf, and we were intimating that Don had changed from Don into the werewolf because it was SC week, and these hands were coming out of the. Anyway, I thought it was funny, and we just had some fun with it. That Monday, and the Huskies lost at USC. Kerry Conklin played, but they lost in a good game, but were beaten at USC. I was in the office in the Graves building that Monday, and just walking around. Chuck Niehaus was a sports information guy there, a great friend of mine, talking to him, and then walked down the hall and walked over into the corner, and Don was just walking down the other hall, walking into his office, and saw me walking down the hall, and he, I'll never forget it, said, Bob, that dipstick of the week thing, that's one of the biggest chicken shit cheap shots I've seen in my life. And I was just like, what? I said, Don, I was just trying to have some fun. Well, it wasn't effing funny. He was beyond pissed. And I think somebody had seen it and told him about it, and he somehow got a hold of it and saw it, and he was furious. And I remember going back to the station and just going, I am never, ever going to cross paths and do that hard with Don James again. And coincidentally enough, a couple of years later, we got the rights back, and so Don and I got back into that same working relationship we had, and we were able to kind of joke about it going forward. But there was a lot of stuff going on in Don's life then. He had some heart issues that he was dealing with that nobody knew about, and that was happening then, and this kind of turned out to fuel that fire a little bit, all in the the intentions were just to have some fun and make some light of the story. But he was beyond angry.
So going forward,
you
knew better.
We never had a moment like that going forward.
That was after you slipped me a beer.
Yes.
In the Michigan. So that never came out, obviously.
No, it probably shouldn't come out now.
Okay. I was 21. I was of age.
Yes, but.
Okay. It's not retroactive, is it?
Yes, but that guy's name, Jim Dillon was the guy's name. He was like an ops guy, and he was the eyewitness to that discussion.
You remember this? Okay, right.
And thank God that never got back to Don, because I'm sure my days as the Husky announcer would have been done right there.
Michigan game. At Michigan. Huge game.
Huge game.
Number 3 in the country with Harbaugh.
Yep.
And I think I had the game of my life, if I don't mind
You
saying
guys
so.
smoked their ass.
And I walked by Bob, was sitting up front. The players were usually in the back of the plane.
No, other way around.
Other way
We're
around.
in the back.
Okay.
You're up front.
Went to the restroom. Kind of gave Bob a look.
And they allowed us, broadcasters and boosters, sit in the back of the plane. You could bring booze onto the airplane.
Bruce King.
Absolutely. And so we had it was Sam Adkins and me and was it Source? No, it was Keith Shipman. But we had like a 12-pack tall boys, I think. And I'm firing one up, and Jimmy's coming back to go to the restroom and sees me and goes. And I looked around, I handed freaking beer, and this guy named Jim Dillon, who was kind of an ops guy with the team, older guy, really, really nice guy, he was the only one that saw this. and just looked at me and just went.
Yeah.
And I was thinking,
we never
God,
knew.
I'm going to get in big trouble for this. And
Yeah.
never happened. You were discreet, obviously, with your beer. So
Yeah. You know, that was that front row at the big house in Michigan that was so close to the benches, like literally 5 feet, the fans. And this guy was harassing me the whole game. I mean, from the time he came out to warm up, so he had my number, and you just ignored him.
oh, you told me this, and he gave you a.
Just on
beer
me
or
the whole,
something
I mean,
afterward?
names that I'd never heard of. You know, I'm like, wow, that was pretty creative. You know, and then after the game, we slipped a cold beer in my helmet. Great game, Rogers. Those are great fans.
You bet.
You know. So, well, Bob, thanks so much for being on the show.
My pleasure,
Really
Jimmy.
appreciate
Really,
it. It's
really good to
great
see you again. Great
and
to
a lot of great memories.
recall some memories and have some good times. And happy you're doing this.
Thanks again.
You bet.
All right. I was concerned about you getting a ticket. That's a good one.